name is Jennifer Walsh, and I'm on a mission to get more people outdoors, to understand and share the health benefits of spending time in nature, to fully comprehend the power that green spaces in nature have on our overall health, well-being, and mental state. We decided to film the entire season at the beautiful wellness community, Serebe. Their mission is to live and work in harmony with nature, connecting people to nature and each other, so choosing to film in this beautiful place was a perfect fit in every way. The conversations on my walk are open and lively. We speak to a cross-section of industry leaders, people with varied backgrounds, yet all share how their connections and time spent in nature have shaped their life and their work. Join me on a walk with Walsh. This season made possible by Mother Dirt, good bacteria for great skin. Hi, I'm Jennifer Walsh, and welcome to this week's episode of A Walk with Walsh. I'm thrilled to have Erik Oberholtzer with us. Welcome.
Thank you.
I'm glad
Happy
you're here.
to be here.
I'm thrilled you're here at lovely Serebe on a beautiful, beautiful fall day.
It's a perfect morning.
It is. We're going to be talking about soil health, regeneration, trees, plants, and how we eat our food.
Everything that matters 3 times a day to us all.
It's so true. And I'm so happy here because we have so much to talk about, and you've been doing so much in your career. You started how many years ago?
I started as a chef almost 30 years ago.
Years.
And spent about 27 of those years in California.
Okay.
First in San Francisco, then Los Angeles, and about 14 years ago started Tender Greens.
Tender Greens,
with
yes.
with a mission to really democratize good food. I had been cooking for the 1% most of my life. Wasn't part of that.
Because I know, and you said, because I know about your story about being at Shutters. And
That's
you were
right.
really serving the elite of California, or the tourists that would come to Shutters.
Yep.
I know Shutters really well because it's a beautiful location.
Mm-hmm.
But what was it that you weren't seeing that you really want to bring to the people?
You know, the foodscape at the time in LA was split. There
Okay.
were the Shutters of the world, Wolfgang Puck and
Sure.
Joachim,
Yep.
feeding what we used to call the newlywed and nearly dead crowd.
Okay, I know that well, yes.
And then there was the in-and-out culture.
Of
You know,
course.
fast food started in Southern California back in the late 40s.
I didn't know that.
And the foodscape was really built around that convenience,
Sure.
fast food, but food that didn't align with my values, both in terms of health and wellness, diversity and what comes up on your plate, and the impact in our agriculture. So I wanted to borrow everything that I had done and built as a chef in California around local food systems, organic agriculture,
Okay.
and bring it to the people, take the elitism out of it a bit.
Of course. Especially if you want to bring good, healthy food to more people, you want to take out of the elitism. How hard was that, though, to be like, okay, I have a great job here. How do I then go to the next step?
It was hard to raise money
Sure.
because at the time there wasn't a model.
Of course.
So there wasn't this fast casual, quick casual space
Yes.
at the time. We just knew, we had an intuition that there were other people who wanted to eat like a chef,
Yep.
which was essentially if I had time to go to the farmer's market
Yeah.
or Santa Monica Seafood, buy the good stuff, prepare it with some skill
Sure.
for people I care about at a price point that fits my budget, then if we could do that and fit it into people's daily lives, which were hectic and busy and built around commuting and working long hours, that we thought we could provide a service that wasn't in LA at the time.
Of course. And you thought, okay, I'm going to open this one place, and you have 2 partners, correct?
Yeah,
2
David and
partners?
Matt.
Okay. And you just say, okay, we're going to open this one location. We want to provide healthy, good for you food. But that's hard to do when you start your first new company. So what did you think of when you thought of this new business? How did you plan it?
So we called our company, the corporate name was TYP Restaurant Group.
I love that. by the way.
which stands for 10-year plan. And what that did for us in name, in commitment to one another,
Yes.
and to the friends, family, and colleagues who wrote checks for
Yes.
$10,000 or $15,000, was that we have this vision
Yeah.
to grow a brand, Tender Greens, across California over the next decade. And it's going to take us a decade to really get to that point where we feel we've made an impact.
Yeah.
So for me, Matt and David, we're in this for the long term. We're not going to open it and then 2 years later go off and get another job.
Well, I love that. I'm going to stop you right there, only because I see that a lot. As an entrepreneur for 20 years, I've always seen so many companies that will start up and just say, I want a quick cash out.
Right.
So I love that you already initially had in the plan, the TYP, the 10-year plan, so people already knew, like, this is what we envision for ourselves and for the growth of the business, and not just a cash out quickly.
Right.
Yeah.
So what we sold to each other, to our families, to everybody who is joining this journey was, this is at the minimum a decade-long effort.
Sure.
Because we want to create lasting value. We didn't want to just build something, sell it, and move on to the next thing.
Yes.
Secondly, we wanted to take all of the attributes of great places that we had worked and sort of pull those into Tender Greens, all the things that we didn't like, make sure that they didn't show up at Tender Greens. And then the things we wished we had as we were coming up through our careers, we wanted to make sure those were part of the journey as well. So it wasn't only about the menu or the supply chain or the restaurant. It was about creating a place where everybody could grow, that we could grow as entrepreneurs, that every chef who joined the journey could stay grounded in their creative selves, while at the same time evolving into entrepreneurs themselves. So we gave everybody a fraction of the action, a little bit of equity, so that
rare.
Very rare.
I don't think I've ever heard of that before.
And as a result, we had a waiting list of chefs who wanted to join Tender Greens. So as we opened new restaurants, we already had talent lined up. I used to call them sleeper cells of talent in different cities,
I like that.
because we just had to make the call and activate, and then they were ready to join us. So we led with that chef identity and that chef talent and that chef leadership at every one of our restaurants.
So I know you were already talking to, you had one farm in the beginning that you went to in California, is that correct?
Scarborough Farms.
Scarborough Farms. So how did you also then be able to almost replicate that in the different farms around the country? Or did you have like relationships with the farmers and then the other Tender Greens locations were able to activate? How did you do that?
It's a combination. So as you know, I had been cooking in California for almost a decade, a decade and a half, 10 years in San Francisco and then, LA at Shutters on the Beach. So I already had a really good network of farmers who I could trust. Yep. The one that we felt was the right partner for us to get started was Scarborough Farms, because they were family owned, and yet they were big enough and consistent enough to grow with us. So we needed a farm that wasn't so small and precious that we would grow out of them too quickly, and we didn't want one that was so big that we didn't have that owner-to-owner relationship. So Scarborough actually, and this was sort of our first innovation at the time, invested both real capital. They wrote a check, and became an equity partner, which was very unusual at the time. And then the other part, which was sort of a creative vehicle, was that we traded $25,000 worth of invoices, some product, for equity, because they were long on lettuces, let's say.
That's a brilliant idea.
And we were long on ambition and dreams, and it tightened that bond that we had with them. So we weren't just a chef farmer.
Exactly. It's a real partnership.
It was true equity partnership. And through the years, it served both of us. When there was drought or fires or something going on at the farm, we were always protected. So that we got product first. We always got the best. That makes a lot of
sense. Absolutely.
Because they were protecting their investment, right? And they protected us on not just supply and quality, but also price. So people would always ask us, how do you do this food?
Yeah.
Like chefs would come in and scratch their heads, like, how are you doing this?
Yes, I'm sure they did.
And that was part of it. Scarborough made their margins, but they always delivered directly to us. So there wasn't another set of hands in the pot. So they made their margins. We protected ours, and we protected supply and quality. And then we also protected them.
Okay.
So I'd gone to Italy one year and came back and was so excited about this Treviso I had tasted. Had them plant about 1,000 seeds, and we got on put it on the menu when it was ready. And within a week, my chefs were calling me and saying,
"What is this?
It's too bitter.
Really?
People don't want it. They're eating around it. We got to pull it." And I resisted at first, and then went into the restaurants, and sure enough, people were pushing it to the side. So we had to pull it. But it's not fair to go back to Scarborough and say, that Treviso that you planted just for me, I don't want it. So we wrote a check. We bought the field.
Did you?
And made good on our commitment there. They tried to find a market for it, but it was scheduled for us.
Trial and error, of course.
But that's an example of we owned our mistake. And it's the same thing with Scarborough. They've always made good on if something happened at the farm, whether there are too many ladybugs in the leaves or whatever.
What a great lesson! Like so many lessons to be learned in that experience with Scarborough Farm that you can actually keep taking to what you continue to do.
And we're in it together. And then that model informed how we grew our supply chain.
Wow.
And then, as we became more successful, we flipped it where we might write a check to a pig farmer.
Okay.
And then they have operating capital to raise those animals, knowing that at the end we get paid back with a pig.
Of course.
So it was a little bit of a barter system, and sometimes it worked out, sometimes it didn't.
Yeah.
But we had that bond, which I think made us unique, and then began with our success to inform how others in the space started to operate.
Yeah. Well, how did you go from, because I know, you then go to New York, you open the Tender Greens in New York. I'm really curious about the hydroponics. Because I know here you are, you're making beautiful food, you have great food, it's delicious. It's really for people to experience and taste real food.
Yep.
Because I'm like, how do you even experience or even know how to get into hydroponics?
So hydroponics is really interesting to me because so much of farmland is under pressure.
Yes.
And we've got climate change. We have all of the food being consumed in the cities.
Sure.
But nothing's grown in the cities. And the more we spend time in the cities, the more disconnected we are with our food. So hydroponics and what more broadly is known as controlled environment agriculture began to show promise as a solution to climate change because it's climate agnostic.
Sure.
Location agnostic. So you can we grow food on 19th and Broadway in the center of Manhattan year round with farm shelf.
Okay.
And what it also does is it leverages technology to optimize growing conditions in places where otherwise you couldn't grow food, which invites consumers, kids, into the magic of food and how it can be grown.
Yeah.
And
what did you actually grow?
Right now I have 10 different ancient varieties of amaranth being grown in my farm shelf.
Okay.
Because I have a partnership with the Crop Trust, which runs the Global Seed Vault in Svalbard. And what we're doing is studying these ancient varieties to see which ones are holding on to magic from a chef's perspective.
Sure.
And if we find one that we really love, that's really special, then we'll let it go to seed and grow more of it. And we're also offering feedback loops to the curators of the seed bank, so that they understand what they have, because
So
there's
the
no
Crop
information.
Trust owns the seed bank, is that it?
It started
Okay.
the seed bank, the global seed vault,
Yeah.
and then there are seed banks throughout the world. There are 11 international vaults or seed banks in the world. The
Wow.
Svalbard vault has a redundant supply of the world's crop diversity. So, in a sort of Hollywood sense, you can imagine, the world just goes to,
Yep.
it takes a dump, and you've got Will Smith, who has the keys
the key for
to,
all the vaults.
and he's racing to get to
Yeah.
Svalbard, get some of the seeds, and start
Sure.
replanting and recovering, the diversity of our planet. What's also important there is as we battle against monocropping in this industrialized food system, what the seed banks offer is that diversity, so that plant breeders can collaborate with chefs, and we can begin to hybridize plants for changing climate conditions and growing conditions, and also our emphasis on flavor and texture versus, let's say, scale and profitability.
Okay.
And it just protects this library of history.
Well, it keeps growing. So what you're doing, which I find fascinating, so you're just evolution in the space of being in culinary school and doing everything you've done. You have stepped away from Tender Greens full time.
Yeah, I stepped away as the CEO at the end of last year, partly because it's there's a period in the entrepreneur's life where it's almost like baseball.
Yes.
There are starting pitchers,
Yes.
and then you have finishers.
I hope
I'm
I
a
understand.
I'm a starting pitcher.
Yeah, I get it. I really get it.
I brought Danielle Bruno in to finish the game.
Fantastic.
And also, it gets me back to the beginning, because I love to look at what are the biggest issues facing our time, and as a chef, how can I provide some portion of the solution? What role do I have in this journey, in this story?
Yeah.
And I see everything through edible moments, and that's brought me to biodiversity in our food system, resilient ecosystems, and regenerative organic agriculture. And then ultimately taking the local food movement to the next step, which I think is really branded Biozone. So we're here at Serebe, which is beautiful. Imagine if you had the Serebe Valley, and everything, let's say, was fell under the sort of definition and practices of regenerative organic agriculture. That, if shared properly, would mean something, in the same way that Parma, Italy, means something.
Absolutely.
That Saint Emilion in Bordeaux means something. And then the more places that are defined around their own magic, I think the more interesting the world becomes. It's why we love going to Europe and eating through the French or Spanish or Italian countryside, because that's how it's been done for so many generations.
Exactly. But I love the fact that this is what's your passion right now, and this is what your focus is, to really make sure that we're almost hyper-localized in how we source our food and how we're really appreciating it. Like, even before we really started talking, we were just kind of chatting about the importance of nature and understanding where and why we're eating it. And then the seasonality of the food.
That's right.
Like, we're just so used to eating frozen food from somewhere else in the world. It's not even close to where we are, and doesn't even taste like the actual food itself anymore.
Right. That's right. And that disconnect then leads us to bad choices, right?
Yes.
And it's not bad choices because we're bad people. We just don't know. We're not connected. So when you can walk through a forest and pick a berry and taste it almost for the first time. I was sharing earlier that, I was introduced to this coffee importer who's based in Philadelphia, and he brought in 6 different heirloom varieties of sugarcane out of Colombia.
Stop right there. 6 different varieties of sugar. Like who would even?
There are thousands.
See, I didn't even know that.
Me neither.
I mean, that's the beauty of like this again. Like what you're doing is like reintroducing the fact that this actually does exist.
Yeah.
It's there for us to really use what's been given to us already naturally.
And it's so much better than what we're used to.
Yes.
So when you can take something as maybe both villainized
Yes. Yes.
and mundane as sugar,
Absolutely.
and almost see it and taste it for the first time and say, wow, I
Is that how you felt? That just
yeah.
Wow.
I don't have a sweet tooth. I don't cook with sugar, but instantly my mind was racing, and I was like, there's so much I can,
Yeah.
because it becomes this like precious condiment, much in the same way that 20 years ago nobody knew what Himalayan salt was.
Absolutely.
Or Fleur-de-Sel or whatever, and now you go in the grocery store, you have 15 different types of salt,
Yeah.
all with different characteristics, and I imagine a day soon where you might have a sugar from the same plantation as your coffee is coming from.
That's
Because
incredible.
this story is not just in Colombia, but it's everywhere, and it's
Yeah.
so important also, not just to to the flavor and the culinary aspect, but then these native tribes, these microeconomies built around this, rely on this. And there's this history, this magic, there's this specialness, not just with the people, but these incredible ecosystems that are built around not the sugar,
Yeah.
but sugar as a component. And the pollinators, the honey that comes from these plantations are exponentially more interesting than anything commercial, than a clover honey. So food just has these many doors to open, and with each door, particularly in this area of biodiversity and regenerative organic agriculture, it'll blow your mind.
Whole new world.
It really is.
Well, again, because we were talking about this also before, the difference between local and organic. You're
Yeah.
talking about like organic out of China versus the local market. And like you say, like hyper localized is so much better because you can really have a conversation with the farmer. You know exactly what's going into the food and how they're growing it themselves versus an organic product made so far away. That's never actually like the actual taste of something.
Yeah, and the sad truth is even organic has been gamed a little bit, which is why you're hearing more and more about regenerative organic, because
Sure.
regenerative organic gets more into biodynamic,
So,
which
so yeah, for everyone else, what does that mean exactly?
so with organics, there's some regulations around inputs. No
Okay.
chemical
Yes.
treatments. There's a manner in which to farm, but it really comes down to chemical versus not chemical.
Okay.
Regenerative organic gets into the entire ecosystem. So how does the agriculture integrate and play with the forest, with the pollinators, and not pollinators that are brought in on
Just
18.
naturally happening.
Yeah.
Like
so
this bee right next to us, just
That's right.
hanging out. Okay.
and that's a bumblebee. That's not a
Bumblebee.
honeybee, because honeybees aren't native to North America. Before it was a bumblebee, or it was the butterfly, or
Yeah.
So we celebrate the honeybee, and we should,
Yes.
but it's because it gives us something.
But also to so people won't even know, oh, there's a honeybee and a bumblebee. What's the difference? So again, you have the opportunity to teach people.
Yeah.
There's a difference.
And you have native types and non-native types, and some are aggressive, some are not. All kinds of things. But all of these bugs, whether you dig into the soil and you
Yep.
see the biology that's active, and how that informs the quality and the health, not just of the plant, but everything else that's happening. Carbon sequestration. I'm now a organic hemp farmer, and
That's in Pennsylvania.
And that's in
correct?
Pennsylvania. It's pulling carbon out of the atmosphere, which is really important, because
Yes.
that helps us with climate change, puts that back into the soil. And if we rotate the crops, then we're recovering the soil.
So what are you most excited about that you're doing next or that's coming up for you?
I'm probably most excited about. Do we want to follow the meditation path?
We can do a little. We can walk like this for a minute as we wrap up, because I know your time is limited.
Well, this is great for walking meditation.
It is great.
I've been a practitioner of transcendental meditation for 30 years, so I
understand.
I meditate twice a day.
I get it. I definitely get it.
But I think what I'm most excited about is sort of this farm that I have in Pennsylvania, and how it can really become a full expression of everything that I've done in life. As a chef, as a sort of a global champion for a more biodiverse food system, as a partner of the Rodale Institute, and helping them lead the way again around this regenerative organic certification, and the whole new generation of farmers in America, and that it becomes this little incubator of ideas centered on regenerative organic agriculture through the lens of Berks County, where it is, so that we can begin to form an identity in Berks County that is there. There's so much, coming back after all these years. There's so much magic just sitting there.
Yes. And you can see it so readily. I'm sure, like with your eyes and your mind, you're like, oh my gosh, I can see the opportunity here. It's just magical.
It's as awesome or more awesome than any other place more famous in the world.
It must kind of light your heart on fire, I would think, because it must be like, oh my gosh, it's just so spectacular here.
It brings me full circle. Yeah.
Just where we just were. Right here.
I know, exactly.
Which is great. I think that's fantastic. Well, I know I've been taking up a lot of your time, but I think what your story is so wonderful, and what you're planning to do is so great, and the activation of really teaching people in a very simple way to understand why our food and our health is important, at a very simple, basic way.
Yeah, a lot of it is nonverbal. When they taste it, when they feel it, when they're in it.
Yes.
And it's getting more people to experience this. It's really what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard, because not everybody has the time or the access, and it's providing more access points, particularly to young kids who I think they're at a place in their lives where this magic can really inform where they decide to go. Absolutely. And how they decide to live their lives, and they are the future.
Yeah.
It's their future that we're protecting, and we haven't done a good job so far.
I know. I agree.
And it's theirs to lead, and I hope they'll do a better job than we have.
I think they will. I'm really excited about the future with them, because while our smartphones and our devices take over a lot, I think they're also willing to understand more about the land that I didn't as a child. I didn't know. I know what I know, and I know what I didn't know.
Yeah. And I think we all have, and it's lifelong learning.
Oh, of course. I think that's the best part about it. Well, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for going on the walk. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and your wealth of information and your passion. I think that's the best part, is I know how excited you are. And you being here to kind of share with us makes it even more impactful for even me, and hopefully everyone else. So thank you everyone for tuning in for this episode of A Walk with Walsh. We hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time. This episode of A Walk with Walsh wouldn't be possible without our sponsor, Mother Dirt. Learn more about all their great products.
Clean. We create habits around this word from the moment we're born. We clean ourselves, our kids, our homes, our environment, so that we can be healthy. Are we? Are clean and healthy starting to become two different things? What about the kind of clean that comes with healthy, with being human, with thriving? Maybe that clean is something different.
And I want to thank our season partners, the Inn at Serebe and Igni Productions. Continue the conversation by subscribing to our YouTube channel and the companion podcast available at Apple Podcast. Thanks again for tuning in. See you next Wednesday for more walks.